Southern Africa is one of the regions most vulnerable to climate change. The last 2 decades have seen the most significant warming.
We have a number of, for example, rivers which we see declining water flows for the past 30 years.
Changes in the rainfall patterns are causing reductions in the amount of food produced in the region. And increasing heavy rainfall is causing damage to infrastructure and exacerbating the region's existing soil erosion problems.
The challenges that climate change poses to Southern Africa are really quite severe, and they relate both to actual physical impacts and the effects of those, as well as to high levels of vulnerability in the region.
In Zanzibar, climate change has got huge impact, including on fisheries, farming, cloves plantations, in agriculture general, and even in tourism sector.
The threats are the ones that we experience quite frequently, like for instance the recent drought in Southern Africa that's made probably 30 to 40% of the rural communities across 6 countries food insecure. And what climate change does is it superimposes additional stresses on the underlying risks that these people face through climate variability.
The impact of climate change in Zimbabwe has been the incessant and continuous droughts that have been experienced in the countryside. There's been problems with rains and water in the cities, and also the changes in the seasons, amount of rain and the temperatures that we experience.
The climate change issues are really critical if you start to look at the data, and we need to be able to fast track our engagement with the issues. We can't, take the slow road. We actually need to work very carefully to enhance our capacity, but, with a sense of urgency.
There's a recognition that climate change, along with other environmental issues that affect development outcomes, is a really important area. But it's also requiring a rethinking of traditional ways of teaching that many universities are still grappling with.
So the universities have a critical role to play, both in helping to produce the knowledge that we need to make more evidence-based policy to actually deal with a lot of the impacts in the region. And they also have a key role to play in equipping the researchers, the policymakers, the practitioners of the future.
The Programme for Climate Capacity Development was the result of a leadership dialogue held by vice-chancellors in 2010 at the University of Mauritius, who said, here's an issue, climate change is an issue that impacts all of us. It doesn't respect boundaries. What are we as universities going to do about it? And
as a result of the dialogue and the discussions, they decided to establish a working group, and the working group was tasked with the job, if you like, of putting together a development program for the universities to try to get regional synergy in terms of climate change response from the universities.
The Southern African Regional Universities Association, SARUA, is a membership-based organization of vice-chancellors of public and private universities in the Southern African development community.
SARUA's purpose responds directly to the SADC Protocol on Education and Training, which was adopted by ministers of education of SADC countries in 2000. And the section on higher education specifically states that SADC does not have the resources to support duplication of teaching and learning and research. So, it sort of implores universities to work together and to share resources and to collaborate.
There is immense desire to collaborate. There is definitely interest in academics to try to share the amount of knowledge that they have.
Getting down to actually effectively collaborating across institutions and across the region involves much more effort in organizing it and enabling it to happen than collaborating within a country or within an institution.
One might find it a little bit onerous at first to engage in these kind of collaborative processes, but the wealth of information and the vastly better product you get from working with a range of people with very different perspectives and viewpoints and different levels of experience. So you bring all of this together and you start to see how working collaboratively with different kinds of stakeholders can really enhance the final product.
We've been able to meet during this workshop with academics from Namibia, Mauritius, Zambia, and a couple of other universities in Zimbabwe.
In 2012, SARUA engaged potential funders and, together with the Climate and Development Knowledge Network, agreed to fund a mapping study to understand the SADC region's needs.
CDKN is an alliance of different organizations which are based across the world, in Africa, in Asia, in Southern America, and in the United Kingdom. And this is an initiative that has been going on for about 7 years now, with the intent of supporting decision makers across the globe to be able to deliver climate compatible development. This project is a very unique project within CDKN's supported portfolio, but despite that, it does fall in with some of our output areas, one of them being an output around partnerships and learning. And under this output, our intent is to try and support collaboration and partnerships in the region that could feed into climate and compatible development. In this particular project here, we actually did feel like it's one of those very unique, innovative projects that do allow you to support collaboration in the region.
The objectives of the mapping study were really to explore across the SADC region what university capabilities were to address the challenges, climate change challenges, both nationally and regionally.
One of the interesting things that came out of the mapping study was that in some countries, university people told us that this was the first opportunity in a long time they had to be in the same room as a government representative who's making policy based on the research they are doing.
We really explored what both the knowledge and the research gaps were in terms of addressing climate change challenges within the local context, and then also what the individual and institutional capacity gaps were.
The mapping study also recommended the establishment of 4 collaborative networks: a macro research network, a curriculum innovation network, a capacity development network, a policy and institutional development network.
I think the one that was quite surprising was that we actually have a lot of activity in the Southern African region in our universities in response to climate change, but at the same time that response is quite uneven.
We identified constraints around single discipline research, but also the need for for interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary research. Some of the areas that people spoke about that we could formulate into more inter or transdisciplinary research themes were things like adaptive governance for climate change management, for example, things around thematic areas around climate change and health, very important, climate change and social justice issues.
We were starting to see the emergence of inter and transdisciplinary research in the different universities, even though it was still in very small pockets, but definitely an awareness of it, and also the importance of a community-engaged approach to research when we're dealing with issues such as climate change.
Curriculum innovation is key to address the dual challenges of knowledge and capacity faced by universities, and a master's degree is a key curriculum innovation point, which can lead to more PhDs and more informed policy responses to climate change. It was therefore decided in 2014 to establish the SARUA Curriculum Innovation Network first.
One of the proposals in the report, the mapping study, was to establish a curriculum innovation network. And out of all of the possibilities for curriculum innovation, it seemed that the one area where most of the sort of emerging innovation was occurring, and also where people wanted more support, was at the master's level. And because the mapping study was also trying to develop a framework for cooperative research, it was decided that, to try to support a master's degree would be the first point of curriculum innovation, because that would be a way of bringing new knowledge of climate change into the universities, and then also developing the next generation of young researchers who could engage with the issues of climate change in the university.
Curriculum innovation means creating demand-driven and learner-initiated curriculum, and a shift away from the traditional methods of delivery to create curriculum that is globally acceptable.
Many of the academics were saying that, these are new areas, they don't really know much about them, they know it's important, and they needed support to integrate this into their curriculums.
The SARUA Curriculum Innovation Network, SCIN, connects universities and external stakeholders and contributing individuals to strengthen curriculum innovation across the SADC region through the development of an open access master's curriculum and courseware in climate change and sustainable development. The curriculum aims to develop knowledge, skills and attitudes as well as competencies.
Curriculum innovation for us means that we need to come up with programs that are acceptable, that are attractive and competitive, not only at national level but also at international level.
Curriculum innovation for our university is bringing for us a new approach, especially the approach on transdisciplinary.
When we talk of capacities for the universities within SADC to be able to offer programs, the problem of capacity is both embedded in the structure, how universities operate within themselves, and also how universities relate to other universities within the same country or outside of the countries within the SADC region.
So one of the lessons was to really look at, trying to strengthen what was already going on and to develop a greater synergy and cooperation across the SADC countries around key priorities for climate change.
The purpose of the master's level curriculum is to prepare graduates for either further academic research or to enter the workplace in policy or practice in the broad area of climate change and sustainable development in Africa.
Then with the curriculum development process, we asked for a consortium of universities to submit a proposal on how they would, first of all, bring in other universities. So any university could apply, but in order to apply, it had to bring in representatives of 4 other SADC countries.
The University of Cape Town, through the ACDI, had some established links to various people working in climate change across the region. So we drew on those where we had good relationships. And then the flip side of that was actually drawing on what came out of the mapping study, which was across 13 of those countries, where there was already a good database of people from universities who had almost volunteered to come to the workshops around mapping, and we could look through that and identify potential collaborators who would then bring complementary sets of expertise to the team. ACDI is a cross-faculty initiative, and this stems from the recognition that many of the problems associated with climate change and development are complex and require interdisciplinary and what we call transdisciplinary approaches to dealing with the issue. So ACDI was established precisely to both bring together these different disciplines at the university to engage with the big question of climate change and development, but also to allow the university to engage more effectively with actors outside of the university who are grappling with the problem.
Seeing this curriculum as an avenue, actually, of collaboration.
This, in my view, is an outstanding curriculum. The way it's been conceived and the potential impact that it has is something that is really new in the region. This idea that you're able to get a master's that is developed collaboratively, where you're getting all this input from different local contexts within the region. And more importantly, that this curriculum, even though it was developed in a certain way, allows for adaptation.
A master's degree graduate profile is an interesting one. Once you've finished your first degree, often scholars would like to continue to develop specialism and also to be able to take up, I think, stronger leadership roles. So the master's graduate, the one that we're looking at in terms of the SARUA master's degree, is one that can both fulfill a leadership role in terms of policy and policy development around climate change, and also an academic leadership role to be able to produce new knowledge and the kind of knowledge that we need in the Southern African countries to respond to climate change issues. So the profile, I think, is one that straddles both policy and practice and academics.
the original idea was that we're looking at two types of graduates. The first graduate is somebody who wants to go into practice in this broad area of climate change and development. You could describe this almost like an MBA in climate change. The second type of graduate is for those who want to pursue a more academic pathway, which would generally be a PhD, then either moving back into policy and practice or moving into an academic track as a researcher or a lecturer.
The approach is transdisciplinary, which includes the ability to engage inclusively with non-academic communities from different sectors relating to climate change and sustainable development in Africa. The graduate will have broad knowledge of the field with the capacity to self-specialize rapidly as needed.
In terms of future growth of this curriculum, first I would like to see it being offered in different institutions. But then offering different institutions would mean collaboration between the institutions to ensure that it is developed in a way that will make it more accessible to different stakeholders, especially students who would like to look into climate change and sustainable development.
The way we set up the capacity development workshops, we built in ways for universities to mix and to be in the same room with people from other universities who they might have seen published papers or seen at a conference but have never really met.
Okay, we just summarize our aim here as to develop our capacity to integrate this course in our system.
We want to run a multidisciplinary course, which we think we can have some inputs with this workshop. And also we want to apply and promote applied research in our field of work and also in specific conditions.
Participating in this important workshop is to enhance our understanding of climate change issues, as well as to increase collaboration.
Now that we are actually trying to get people to implement it in their universities, I can see there is a lot of capacity building that needs to be done.
Our plans for adopting this innovative curriculum are to set up a team to drive a process of getting consensus inside our university, which will be quite a process. And once we've got that, we'll get it through Senate and then through our national department, and then we'll go from there.
This program will now be used perhaps by other programs, existing programs, to feed them with some of the courses and the workshops that will be done on the program, but they will be assisting other programs.
I'm going to develop this in my own faculty, and since I'm the dean, this will be fairly easy for me. So I'm going to get this through Senate, a master's program in climate change and agriculture. Okay, it would have to be agriculture since it's my department. I haven't got the appellation yet finalized, but I'll go back and discuss with my colleagues, my staff. So I definitely am going to have something in agriculture. And I'm also going to encourage academics and other faculties to develop something similar.
The University of Zimbabwe, of which is where I come from, is going to adapt and also adopt some of the elements of this curriculum. From the undergraduate courses, we are also going to take some of the concepts from the climate change curriculum.
With this, it is a pleasure to have this program. So it is going to adopt it as it is, although we might have to customize a little bit.
From this workshop we had, we are looking forward in terms of implementing this NMSc in climate change as fast as possible, and in the timeline, given the timeline of 2 years. So we are hopefully looking forward in terms of introducing that.
Programs like the SCIN and the Master's Curriculum can play an important role in operationalizing the Paris Agreement framework on capacity building, especially as they emphasize building the institutions in the region that will produce the next generation of researchers and decision makers.
In terms of the process, this has been a process that has involved so many stakeholders and countries within the SADC, And the information that has actually been obtained to be able to build the program is very rich in terms of the diversity of the countries in the sub-Saharan Africa and the SADC area, and also the involvement of all such varied professionals.
The masters, the actual process of developing the curriculum, I think that this has been it's been really groundbreaking. I don't think this has been done to this extent before, certainly not at a regional level and on climate change and sustainable development.
And what's exciting about this point and the way the curriculum has been designed is we have no idea what you're going to do with it, and that's the nice part of it.
My vision is to see that the SARUA climate change program is taken by universities in the countries of SADC.
Just being able to work together within the same region and having to have dealt with quite the same problems from different angles allows for people, when they do come together, to speak with the same voice, to grapple with the same problems, and therefore whatever solutions do come out from that, they are solutions that could really be broadly shared, that could be used to actually deal with different problems within different contexts. It is very important that people are able to relate and interact and exchange their knowledge and understanding within a context in which they are all able to relate. And I think this program that we have actually gone through has definitely demonstrated that.
Mama kamile na wo 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 wo, Papa kaswende na ye 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 ye, Mama kamile na wo 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 wo, Kutambo kaye, Kutambo kawo, Kutambo kaye, Kutambo kawo.
VM Productions.